Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, September the 3rd, 2024. It is currently 10:04 a.m. Central Time, and I am coming to you live from the Theology Central studio, located right here in Abilene, Texas. Now, when you meet someone, when you have that first meeting with someone, your first time meeting someone, you start talking, you start making sometimes lots of judgments about them relatively quick, right? You may notice their accent. You may notice what they're wearing. You may notice how they look. You may notice how they talk, how they laugh. And sometimes you may make some quick assessments. And sometimes those quick assessments, sometimes those quick judgments are, well, not only are they just very shallow and surface, but in many cases they're not really correct. You may think you can say this about a person, but sometimes you don't really know, and you may come to some conclusion about them. You may come to some conclusion that you think this about them or you think this about them, but in many cases you don't really know much because you just met them. You cannot judge a person. I guess I'll use this phrase. You can't judge a person by the cover. People say you can't judge a book by its cover. You can't judge a person by its cover. You just start getting to know them. That first interaction, that first meeting, you can't judge them. Because you don't know them. Here's what we have to know about every person we meet, that what we see there's really, what we see doesn't tell the story, because behind what we see and every person we meet, there is a bigger story. There is a deeper story. And what we simply see externally doesn't tell that story, right? You meet them, they may talk about this, they may talk about that, and you may draw some kind of conclusion, but you don't really know what you're talking about, because that person is much more complex than the things we judge and the things we critique and the things we like and dislike. There is an entire story behind that face, behind that voice, behind that personality. There's a story that has made them into what they are. And there's lots of parts of that story. Now, if you've listened to this podcast, again, many times people jump to conclusions about me, and they'll say this or say that, or, well, you think this or and it's like, I don't know if you're in the position to draw those kinds of conclusions, because you don't really know me. You've heard my voice. You've heard me express this or that, but trust me, there's much more to the person behind this microphone. There is a story. And I've shared some of my story. And my story, I typically kind of break into certain parts, right? There is the story of my life before my mother died, right? And I've told about how horrible much of it was. Things get so bad that I'm living with a different family because of how the situation was unraveling and just getting worse and worse and worse. And while I was living with another family, my mother died. So we have the part of my story is before my mother died, then my mother died, then I don't always go into much detail of the immediate aftermath or everything that happened after my mother died. I guess the main part I usually tell after my mother died was then my attempted suicide and my 8 weeks in a psychiatric ward. And I do sometimes tell that part of the story. So before my mother died, my suicide attempt, and then in a psychiatric hospital for those 8 weeks. All right. So I do tell that part, but there's a lot there that I don't really go into detail and I don't really explain. Then my story really picks up. I join the military. I leave Texas. I leave Abilene. And in a sense, I leave everything in the rearview mirror. I drive away. I drive out. I leave Abilene on a Greyhound bus. Right. And I don't ever look back. To me, I don't ever want to look back. I don't want to come back. I'm done. In a sense, I've kind of washed my hands of it all. I'm done with everything about it. And I'm pursuing my life. Now, of course, we know how life worked out. About 10 years later, the United States military put me right back here in Abilene, Texas. It brought me back to where it all started, in a sense. So that's kind of my story. Before my mother died, the immediate outcome of my mother's death, which is my suicide attempt in the psychiatric hospital, and then my life in the military. That's there. But in the midst of my story, there was another story. There was another story unfolding, and that was the story, of my sister. My sister was much younger than me. When my mother died, I believe my sister was around 6 years of age, 7 years of age. And don't get upset at me for not knowing the age or dates and some of that, because again, I'm not super close with anyone in my family. So, but when my mother died, she was 6 or 7. She was young. I was a teenager. I was in high school, and she was around 6 or 7. My sister's name is Hope, right? Lots of reasons. There was the Days of Our Lives soap opera. There was a character by the name of Hope. My understanding is my mom named Hope after that. I cannot 100% confirm that, because obviously my mother is dead. But her name was Hope. And of course, she was little when my mother died. Now, for me, after my mother died, obviously, I wasn't living at home, number one. So I wasn't really present there to how everything was going down for Hope, right? And then I had my own life was unraveling and tried to kill myself, psychiatric hospital. Obviously, I wasn't thinking about my sister Hope. I wasn't paying any attention to that. Nothing. I kind of moved on with my life. Now, after I get out of the psychiatric hospital, I do come back home. So then it's me, my brother, who's about 2 years younger than me, my sister, like I said, she's like 6, 7 at this time, and then my father. Now, for me, in my mind, I was thinking, this is tragic as this has been. My mother dying, at the age of like 39. My mother's dead. I tried to kill myself. Okay. But I'm back at home, right? And other things in my life was unraveling. So, but I had this little, maybe I was naive, but there was like, okay, here, cause I'll never forget. We were standing in the kitchen and there was like these countertops, kind of like where you could sit and eat at this kind of right there next to the kitchen. And we were kind of just standing there, sitting there. And it was my dad, it was my brother, it was my sister, and it was me. And we were eating pizza. And in my mind, as I was standing there, sitting there, I was like, as tragic as this has been, this is our chance. This is a chance for restoration. This is a chance for healing. This is a chance for reconciliation. This could be good. We could actually be something like a family. Even though we may never address the demons of the past, even though there may never be an apology, this could be it, right? That was my way of thinking, but everything went opposite to that, because less than 1 year from my mother's death, my brother, my sister, and me were sitting in the exact same church, that my mother's casket was. I mean, where my mother's casket was sitting, right where her body was, in the exact same church, in the exact same spot, now stood my father and another woman getting married. Less than 1 year less than a year from burying my mother. And again, the casket was standing in that sitting in that very location. And now there's my dad and this other woman getting married. Now, at that point, things were obviously not good. I wasn't even sitting with the family. I wasn't sitting with my brother. I wasn't sitting with my sister. It was me, myself, by myself alone. And I'm sitting there looking at this like, what has happened? What has happened? Not only is my dad getting married, he's married a woman who had, 4 kids? Let's see. Yeah, 4 kids. So next thing you know, the door opens, 4 kids come walking into the house, right? And, well, I lose my room. My brother loses his room. My sister loses her room. Like, my sister has to share a room. Me and my brother are now put in the back of the house. They did kind of an addition back there. And it's like everything changed. Everything changed. And now again, my sister, so she's like 7 years old at this time. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I wasn't even thinking about her. I was thinking, what has happened? What is going on? Any hope of restoration, any hope of reconciliation, it's over. This whole thing has just fallen apart. And the woman who came in, she did not like me. She wanted me gone. All right. It was not a good situation. It was not good. But so for me, because I was older, I was a teenager, I'd graduated from high school. I stayed away. I just stayed away from the house. I stayed away. So I did everything I could. I was trying to get into the military. And the next thing you know, I joined the military and I'm gone. I'm gone. And they're left in this now new bizarre situation was my brother and my sister. I was moving on with my life. Now I can look back with regret that I did not look out for my sister or think about her. I was still trying to figure out my life. But there was my sister, and now in this new family dynamic, whatever you want to call it, right? And she's in the midst of it. I already knew there were problems, right? Because even before I leave, I tried to tell my dad and his new wife, hey, there's some drugs going on. There's something not right here. And I was ignored. Well, then I leave. And then what unfolds there is utterly just, it's complete and utter chaos. I could tell you all the stories. You would not believe all the things that went down after but I was gone. I left. Now, after some time, my sister comes to where I am in Nebraska and stays with us for a little while. We definitely present Christianity to her. There's like some hope that maybe, no pun intended, her name is Hope, but there was hope that now we thought possibly put our faith in Christ. She was going to try to live out her Christian life. We thought things were possibly moving in the right direction. We really thought everything was going well. And then she came back home and then everything just completely unravels. Everything. So I was a part of the story, but not really. I only was there for a little bit of it. And then everything that happens is just, it's tragic. It is insane. It is crazy. Everything that happened after, just everything fell apart for my sister's life. Just utterly unraveled. It came completely apart. Now, why am I mentioning a little bit of my story with my sister's story? Well, primarily because I want you to go listen to my sister's story, because my sister's story has now been turned into a 2-part radio drama from the very famous program Unshackled. They have turned my sister's story into a 2-part radio drama. Unshackled's been on the air on Christian radio stations forever. I think it is the longest running radio drama out there. And it tells the story of people's conversion. And most of the stories are pretty dramatic. And my sister's story definitely fits right into all of that, because her story was tragic, her story was crazy, and her conversion is somewhat dramatic. Now, I kind of show up in the story just briefly, So so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you hear a little bit of this, but what I'm going to do is in the notes to this program, I'm going to put the link to part 1 and part 2 of my sister's story. And then for those who use the Church One app, I'll send out a notification with a link. I'll send out probably 2 notifications, one to part 1 of my sister's story and another one to part 2 of my sister's story. And then on the sermonaudio.com website, sermonaudio.com, the new website, sermonaudio.com. If you look for Theology Central and then find the article section, I will also try to include links to my sister's story there. If you're interested in hearing her story, maybe you are, maybe you're not, but I do play a part of it. So let me at least explain a couple of things. Obviously, Unshackled, breaking my sister's story into 2 parts. Typically, the stories are just one, right? They're not usually 2 parts. Usually it's just one. And it's less than 30 minutes long. With their introduction, they're kind of in the middle. They have like a little information about their mission there in Chicago. And then the conclusion at the end, it's less than 30 minutes. So when you try to take someone's life story and compact it into less than 30 minutes, or in this case, in 2 parts, you got to leave a lot of things out. And what's required in a lot of the storytelling is a lot of times they'll take multiple maybe events and kind of compact them into one thing. So it's not always a completely 100% accurate telling of the story, right? And so, in my sister's case, a couple of things. One, well, the other woman obviously is still alive. My father is dead, but he doesn't show up in the story, I don't think, ever. I don't think he does. Maybe he does. Maybe in part 2. I don't know. But I don't think, part 2, he's already passed away by the time part 2 takes place. So, so it's just the other woman does show up in it. And so my sister kind of, I don't know what she said to them and how they wrote it, but they view the other woman in a much more positive light than obviously I would. Okay. And that's an understatement. And my sister doesn't put she doesn't assign any blame to kind of what the environment she found herself. But if I was to tell you the stories, I mean, basically when my dad got remarried, the kids, it was almost like the Lord of the Flies. It's like, it just turned into Sodom and Gomorrah. It was just insanity. And my sister was, 8, 9, 10, 11 in the midst of all of that. It was insanity. It was just total insanity. So, I could tell you the stories and how everything went. Put it this way. Nothing was going on we could talk about some really messed up things that happened. So, but I think my sister didn't want to put blame on that. I would definitely tell the story different. So her childhood part there, they move quickly through it, but it's done in a much more positive way than I would. I do show up in the story. And my part is not, I don't know where this event supposedly occurred. It may be a mixture of events, but it did not go down this way. We may review at least up to that point where I show up in the story. But I definitely want you to hear the entirety of the story. It's a story of drugs. It's a story of sexual abuse. It's a story of addiction. It's a story of just a life spiraling literally out of control, of possible desire for suicide. It's so tragic. But at least the good news now is my sister is clean. That's the good news. Now she has put her faith in Jesus Christ. That's good news. And her life is now very different than what the story tells. But I want you to hear a little bit of this. Again, if you go to Unshackled, I think it's unshackled.org, unshackled.org. If you go to that and you look for their audio dramas and you scroll down, you'll see Hope Part 1, Part 2. That's her story. Hope Part 1, Part 2. And this is how it begins. This is an episode of Unshackled. The program kind of forces you to face yourself and think is kind of their tagline. And, I want you to, listen and you can kind of hear. But what I want you to take from this Not only if you go listen, I want you to just remember every person you meet, you make all those quick, rash judgments and you form all these opinions about them. And some people think they know someone within a couple of minutes and they're, well, I don't like when people do that to me. Well, you think this, stop. You don't know my story. Stop. I get really irritated by that, right? All of us, when you see someone, there's a story behind that person. You may not like their action. You may not like the way they do this, but there's a story. And that story then makes up who we are. So when you hear my sister's story, just remember everyone in your life, there's a story. That stranger you meet, there's a story. And that story really is important. So this is all about the story of one person's life, my sister's. I play a part in it. It's just interesting that I kind of show up in part one. I wasn't expecting me to show up in it. Because again, there's a lot of, I wasn't really there. I mean, our age difference really definitely put us in a different, we were in different stages of life and a lot was going on for both of us. All right. But here we go. This is how it begins.
How do you do? Due to the subject matter in this episode, parental guidance is suggested. Have you ever put a puzzle together only to get to the end and realize you're missing a few crucial pieces? Incredibly frustrating. The woman in our story thought of her life as a giant puzzle with missing pieces, and the missing represented the bad choices she had made. She thought she'd lost so much of herself that she'd never be whole again, until Providence filled in the missing pieces, and that's when her heart and mind and very life were unshackled.
Now, right before this starts, when my sister sent this to me yesterday and I hit play, that first part, I'm like, okay, that's really kind of profound, puzzle, missing pieces, Providence. Okay. I was like, okay, great. I wasn't giving it much thought. And then the opening scene happens and immediately I was overwhelmed with emotion, like massively overwhelmed, because the scene opens with, now the other woman is present. My sister's talking to her. And so like at this moment, I was like, I'm a part of the story. Like, even though I'm not mentioned here, I'm very much a part of the story. And it just brought it all back. It just brought it was like someone just walking up, punching me in the face because my feelings of what was going on in that time were obviously very different than my sister's, but it forced me back into the story. And one of the ways I feel like I was able to navigate my life was there was like like, I'm done. Like, that story is the past. I'm moving. I'm not going back. Like, I'm done. I'm letting it go. I don't want to relive it. I don't want to talk about it. I want to move on. And for the most part, I moved on and tried to form up my own life. Now, the demons of my past were still haunting me, but I mean, you can't. Everything that we went through, you can't just leave hey, I'm going to leave all of my demons and all of my baggage at the Texas border, and I'm leaving Texas. I carried plenty of it with me, and it has, been an issue at times throughout my whole life. But I wasn't prepared to kind of be brought back into the story. So it really messed up my day. Whew. It had a profound impact on me. I can't even express, it literally, even right now, I know they're getting ready to play it, and already just chills go through my body because it's just forcing me. I can almost imagine the house. I can imagine the room this conversation happened in. I know what room it would have been in. I know that this is not 100% accurate retelling of it. Of course, it's dramatized, and I know they're bringing a lot of concepts together. But I mean, there's things about this that just drives me crazy because it's presented and not as negative as it should have been presented, right? The whole thing. But here's how they start the story.
Hey, what? What are you doing?
Hope! Oh, you startled me.
Why are you changing my bedroom around?
Oh, I'm making a little more space in here.
But my bed has always been by the window.
I know, but my daughters need a place to sleep. You have stepsisters moving in.
It'll all change now, huh? Since you married my dad.
I know losing your mom was hard, but your dad and I think you'll be happier now. We'll be a real family again.
Now, I can't stand that line. I can't stand that line because this would be my sister. This is supposed to be my sister. Again, this is the story of my sister's life dramatized. That's supposed to be my sister, and then that's the woman my father had married after my mother had died. Yes, all the stepbrothers and stepsisters, quote unquote. I don't necessarily refer to any of them as stepbrothers or stepsisters. I don't claim any kinship or any relationship with any of them, right? I know that may not be very nice, but like the way I had to survive this was I'm not connected to any of this. I don't even know what's happening. How is this even going on, right? And trust me, there was no connection between me and my father's new wife. Things were not good there either. So, but yes, they moved in. And me and my brother, again, we got moved to the back, and my sister, I don't even know where she was in the midst of all of it, but her whole life was being rearranged. So it was difficult for her. Now, hey, we're going to be a real family now. I can't stand that line. That line drives me crazy because there was no being a real family. It was so not that. It was everything opposite of that. I'm telling you, it was the Lord of the Flies. It's like they got married and they did their thing, and the kids were left to just fend for themselves, which led to utter chaos, led to the drugs, led to all the things that ultimately happened, that ultimately almost, killed my sister. So again, I'm not denying her personal choice in this, but man, she was so young in this. So I'm going to back this up again. Again, what we're listening to is my sister's life that's been turned into a 2-part radio drama for the radio program Unshackled. It aired a couple of weeks ago. My sister sent this to me yesterday. If you want to hear it, you can go to unshackled.org, look for audio dramas. You have to scroll down, look for Hope Part 1, Part 2. I will be sending out links after this is over. But listen, I do show up in the story, and we'll critique my scene when we get there. Here we go.
Around.
Oh, I'm making a little more.
I'm going to back that up a little bit more. That wasn't very far. Here we go.
And that's when her heart and mind and very life were unshackled.
Hey, what? What are you doing?
Hope! Oh, you startled me.
Why are you changing my bedroom around?
Oh, I'm making a little more space in here.
But my bed has always been by the window.
I know, but my daughters need a place to sleep. You have stepsisters moving in.
It'll all change now, huh? Since you married my dad.
I know losing your mom was hard, but your dad and I think you'll be happier now. We'll be a real family again.
And I have to share my room.
Afraid so. And your closet, too. But you'll have stepsisters. Won't that be fun?
But my closet's already so small.
We'll work it out. Tell you what, let's go and find your new sisters and have some blueberry muffins, okay?
But Mom always made brownies on Sundays.
I have no idea where my sister, I don't know if Unshackled added the brownies on Sundays part. I don't know where that comes from. I have no idea. I don't remember one time in my entire life my mom making brownies, okay? Not once. If it happened, it happened. If anyone, see, my dad made peanut butter candy. I did love that. I don't know what the recipe was, but I absolutely loved it. And then maybe my dad may have made brownies. I don't remember my mom making anything. Okay, so I don't know where that came from. I have no idea. I don't know if my sister added that. I don't know if her mind. I don't know where that came from. And I definitely don't remember the other woman making anything, okay? If she made blueberry muffins, I don't remember where those ever showed up either, okay? Because all I remember is all of us kids fending for ourselves. They would go to the grocery store and buy stuff that basically was expired. They were about to throw away. They put it in a huge freezer, and then we would open the freezer and take whatever these frozen, almost expired pizzas and burritos or whatever, and then put them in a microwave. And then me and my brother came up with a couple of things to make. Like I don't remember any of this going down. I don't remember. And I definitely, my sister was like 6 or 7 when this was all happening. So I don't know if she gave this to Unshackled or this is the dramatized part that they made up. But I'm like, where did this occur? All right, but let's see how this goes down.
Oh, well, your sisters like muffins better. You're okay with that, aren't you?
I guess so.
Of course you are. Now hurry before your sisters eat all the muffins.
And just for context, so what happened is the woman my father married had 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. So there was 4, right? Then you had me, that makes 5. My brother makes 6, and then my sister makes 7. So that's how we went from, the rest is history. And you'll see how my sister is going to tell this story.
From Chicago, Pacific Garden Mission brings you Unshackled, the unique dramatic series that tells meaningful stories of lives transformed. In 1877, when the first rescue mission west of the Hudson River opened its doors, the facilities were limited, but the aim was impressive, to provide help and hope to homeless people. Now, nearly a century and a half later, the facilities are greatly expanded, but the aim is unchanged. Help includes food, clothing, lodging, rehabilitation, life skill classes, house and job placement, and counsel. All are provided to our guests free of charge. Counselors offer hope and holistic care, dealing with the total person. In 1950, when our first Unshackled program was broadcast, it was heard by possibly a few thousand listeners. Today, and in almost every nation on earth, it is heard by millions. This still growing outreach exists because listeners have made it their business to invest in our ministry. They are determined to make it possible for others to hear the message of hope, healing, and redemption, which is what this program celebrates. Now for broadcast around the earth, here is episode number 3837 in the series Unshackled, the program that makes you face yourself and think. The woman in our story experienced the death of a parent, which is especially hard on a child. Would it be too hard to bounce back from? You'll find out as we bring you part 1 of the true story of a woman we're calling Hope, right now on Unshackled.
And they're calling her Hope. Her real name is Hope. And the death of a parent, again, for any of us, I don't know if any of us ever bounced back from it. I don't know if any of us was able to ever truly recover from it. I don't know. Obviously I tried to kill myself in the immediate aftermath of it. My sister, again, between 6 and 8 years of age, her situation was just, like I said, I was so separated from it in some aspects. And then my brother, his whole story is his own story. So let's hear a little bit. I'm not going to play all of this again. I'm just introducing this so that everyone, if you're interested, you'll go listen. But the message is this. Every person you meet has a story. Don't just reduce them to a cover. Just don't reduce them to, well, they like this or they don't like. There's more to people than we sometimes want to imagine. And here's my sister's story.
Some people say time heals all wounds, but I never believed it. Gaining a new family at 8 years old after my mom died rocked my world. My stepmom tried her best to give me a new normal. We did things most families do. We always attended church, which I liked, but I never seemed to find my place. Not in school, not even in my own family. A piece of myself always seemed to be missing. I thought I'd finally found it during high school, until I realized that sometimes fitting in could lead you into the wrong places.
Now, there's a lot there, okay? If they did go to church, that definitely was different than when I was living there, because we didn't, okay? There was some church here or there, but that's not the way it went down. Second, I know the other woman is alive, so my sister, she sees the other woman more in a motherly way than obviously I did. And I would not say she did. I would say that my father and her did not do the best that they could. And the way my sister is telling the story, that everything kind of went wrong in high school, but the things that were falling apart and disintegrating were happening there in the house, right? Because it turned, again, it's not even my words. Other people who were there, other people who were in that midst said, it became Sodom and Gomorrah. It was just insanity. It was just total anarchy. And so maybe my way is much more negative. But again, my sister probably didn't want the story to be told from a more negative perspective, blaming, because I think what contributed to a lot of it was what was going on in the house on Fridays and Saturday nights. Because I've heard horrible stories about what's happened. Well, I could tell you the story. So I got proof of those stories. So, but I think my sister did not want to do any more damage because she wants a relationship there with the woman that my father married. Again, my father died way into this story. So yeah, but yeah, let's listen.
Especially when it came to boys.
I don't know about this, Jack. My stepmom's pretty strict on curfews.
Hey, chill, it's just a little party.
I know, but...
But what? You nervous? Because I got just the thing for that.
Okay, I'll drink one beer, but then we have to go.
Beer? I got something better. Try this.
Is that weed?
Not just any weed. The best. Here, let me...
Now, she's putting the weed outside of the house. I already knew the weed and the drugs were already in the house. In fact, I'd already warned the parents that, hey, or my father and then the woman he married, hey, there's drugs here. Does anyone care? They're like, are you going to do it? And I was basically like, I was trying to cause trouble. I was a troublemaker. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So the drugs were in the house. She didn't have to go outside of the house. The drugs were in the house. All right. That was the issue. Okay. But all right.
Light it up for you.
I don't know.
When you start feeling it, you and I can go somewhere and have a little fun.
But everybody's watching us.
So, everybody's doing it. You fit right in.
Well, okay. But just this once.
Fitting in didn't make me feel any better deep down, but I was accepted by the party crowd, and that felt good. Or so I thought. Until smoking weed became a habit, and so did giving in to every guy who asked. I was always terrified that my parents might find out, but I craved that feeling of acceptance. Then I went to spend the summer with my older brother, who was a church pastor, and apparently very intuitive.
Okay, this is where I show up in the story. This is where I show up in the story, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I was not a church pastor at the time. Okay, so that's number one. I was in the military. I was going to school to be a church pastor. But she did come stay with us. And I guess I was somewhat intuitive. I was intuitive before I left home, trying to let everyone know this situation is not good. I was trying to offer the warning then, right? So when she came to live with us, I was trying to fix the problem. This story that she's about to tell did not happen, because I would never, in any circumstance, manipulate someone to go to church. This did not happen this way. I'm going to have to ask my sister about why did this show up in the story? I never manipulated you to go to church. No, I wouldn't. That was never my game. I knew, if you don't do this, if you don't come to church, I'm going to do that's not the way I've ever handled it. But here's where I show up. I show up as Terry. That's not my real name, but that's the name they use. This is me showing up in the story. All right, here we go. Here is yours truly in an episode of Unshackled. Here we go.
What?
Roll it down. Hand over the keys.
Why?
Now. Where are you going?
Don't you trust me to drive your car?
Is there some reason I shouldn't?
No. Why?
Look, Hope, you may be able to fool Mom and Dad, but not me.
I'm just going to a party.
A party where everyone's smoking and drinking and who knows what else.
I'm not.
I know the pressure you're under.
What pressure?
And pressure can cause you to do things that can get you into trouble.
What's that mean?
It means I can't let you drive my car if you're hungover or going to drink some more.
Terry!
Am I right?
What? So now I guess you'll tell Dad?
Don't you think I should?
Oh, great. Just what I need.
Look, I know from experience you won't find what you're looking for in drinking and drugs.
'Cause it's a sin, right?
Yeah, it is. And because God wants a better life for you than that.
So what are you gonna do? You gonna send me home?
No. Not if you come to church with me tomorrow.
Please don't make me do that.
You used to love church.
But God gave up on me a long time ago.
Or maybe you gave up on him when you started doing your own thing.
Like what?
Well, like all the things you were going to do tonight had I not stopped you. Hope, I know it's nice to feel accepted and cool, but think about what you're doing before it destroys your life.
There was my appearance in the episode of Unshackled. There's so much about that. First, I don't have a Southern accent like that. Okay, so that's 2. I'm not Terry. 3, when she come to live with us in Nebraska, she wasn't partying. She didn't even have a driver's license. I don't even think at the time. If she did, she definitely wasn't driving my car. At least I don't believe she was. Okay. There was never a situation where I'm like, you're not give me the keys. That never occurred. And I never would have said, I'll tell Dad unless you come to church with me. That's not. She came to church with us because, we went to church and she was living with us and we weren't letting her stay by herself. So she went to church and then she made a profession of faith. And then we thought everything was great. We thought everything was going well. And then she came back home and then everything. Once she comes back home, after she left Nebraska to come back, that's when the story literally unravels and a total, complete chaos, right? Here, we'll listen to just a little bit more.
I wanted to take his advice, but the drugs already had a grip on me. Even in college, daily use was a huge part of my life, and they helped medicate my feelings of emptiness. So when I met someone who made marriage sound cool and appealing, I thought it might fill that empty spot. We had a daughter, Melanie, and I soon discovered that my new spouse struggled with mental health issues.
Shut there, kiddo!
Melanie, Daddy didn't mean that.
Daddy wants you to shut up.
Stop it, you're scaring her!
No, what scares her is the possibility of you leaving us.
What?
Now that marriage was not good. That turned into horrible situation. Now, I was not a part of any. I was in Nebraska. I was in the military, and I'd basically, for all practical purposes, had no contact with anyone in the family. I basically was done. I had moved on with my life. So she ends up in an abusive situation, horrible situation. That husband ended up killed. He ended up murdered, if I remember that part of it, the story correct. I don't think they go into that. Then she marries someone else. That marriage falls apart. But yeah, at this point, things are not going well. Things are not going well. Things are not good here, right? And so I think I come back. I end up in I don't end up in the middle of it. I think I show back up a couple of times. And I think me and Hope have some then. I think then because I'm kind of like, young, passionate, trying to serve God. I think I kind of handled it in a much more Pharisaical, judgmental kind of way. Like basically, you're an idiot. I don't know what your problem is. If that's the way you're going to be. Basically, I did not handle it in a very compassionate or godly way. I was very much like, you're just being an idiot and you're destroying your life. And I don't know what your problem is. You claim to believe in God, but clearly, like I just came at it in a very judgmental, I didn't handle it in a very good way. Let's put it that way. So at that point, then our relationship was pretty much over. And then she was kind of, then it just drugs and we're not even getting, when you get to part 2 of this, the story just, it is that's why it's turned into our radio drama, because it's absolutely crazy. But we'll just wrap this up to at least this part.
Oh, come on, Hope. I see the way you look at our mailman.
Are you out of your mind?
You know it's true. And it's not just him. I saw you talking to Dave.
Dave who?
The grocery store manager. This past weekend.
You're insane!
And you're a cheater.
I was asking him where they kept the baby formula.
And probably getting his number too. And shut her up. Or so help me.
What? You'll beat on her like you beat on me? Stop it!
You deserved it. And where do you think you're going?
Let go of me! Come here, baby. Come with Mama.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
Anywhere! You follow me, I'll go to the police!
You know you can't make it without me. You'll be back!
Driving away with my face bruised and my nose bleeding, I vowed to make it on my own. Somehow, alone with my little girl and without his constant abuse, I managed to land on my feet. I finished college, got a job, and worked hard to keep my drug use from my boss.
And that is true. She did get a good, graduated from college, did get a good job. Things were looking up for a while. Things were actually, there was a period of time looking good. In fact, I came back. Yeah, for the second marriage, I was there when she got married. I did come in from Nebraska for the second marriage, and everything was looking up. Like everything was looking really good at the second marriage. She had made it through all of the craziness at the house, but the drugs really kind of was I guess still there. Like at that time, I wouldn't have known the drugs were still there at that point. I would not have had a clue because I was so disconnected from it.
I even found a babysitter who lived in my building. That babysitter, Cindy, would take my daughter with her to the prison when she was visiting a relative there. That relative, Robert, got to know me a little through my daughter and her babysitter.
Robert becomes the third husband in the story. So this is all from Unshackled. This is my sister's story. And it aired recently, and I'm just what I'm trying to use this for is to show you that no matter what, when you meet a person, there's more to them than what you see. And well, this is my sister's story, so we'll just play a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to put the links to the episodes in the show notes, and then if you're using the Church One app, I'll send out the link to this. If you go to unshackled.org. You can hear a little bit. You can hear all of my sister's story. They broke it down into 2 parts, part 2 is where it. Well, let's just review a little bit more of this.
So you can imagine my surprise when. Hello?
This is a call from Alfred D. Hughes Unit. We have inmate Robert Reyes on the line. You accept the call?
Who?
Do you accept the call?
Yeah.
Hold for the transfer, please. Hope?
Yes?
Hi. It's good to finally talk to you.
Yeah. Hi, Robert. I got your letter.
Oh, good. I hope it's okay that I'm calling.
Yeah, sure.
Good to finally hear your voice after hearing so much about you from Cindy and Melanie.
Oh, well, thanks. So, how are you? That's a terrible question. You're in prison.
No, it's fine. I'm doing good. I'm doing 45. I'm doing good.
45 years?
Yeah, but I'm praying for parole. You never know.
Well, that's good.
Yep, I believe with the Lord anything is possible.
Yeah. Your letter said you were in, a Bible study. You still doing that?
I can't not go to Bible study. Helps me survive. We do a weekly study here with guys from our unit.
Oh, that's nice.
How about you, Hope? You read the Bible?
Oh, not in a long time.
Always time to start again.
Oh, I don't know. God and I are, rather distant these days.
Oh, well, I can guarantee you he's not the one that moved.
I just feel like he's given up on me.
Or maybe you gave up on him. Like I said, he don't move. It's always us. But sin does that to a person. Makes them move away from God. So what's your struggle?
Struggle?
Yeah, what separates you from God? Booze, drugs, lust, pride, greed. We all got something.
Well, I do some drugs. But I don't use at work or around my daughter. But
it's hard, right? I get it. When you need someone to talk to, give me a call. I'm, well, I'm always here.
I was fascinated that someone doing a 45-year prison sentence would be reading the Bible and trying to encourage me. His words echoed my brother's, that God hadn't given up on me. It was strange and comforting at the same time, and our friendship grew along with the phone calls. And now I've got that better job. I think I'm finally getting my life together.
So did you marry that guy we talked about?
I did. He's kind to Melanie.
Sounds good. But no drugs, right?
Well, not exactly, 'cause, well, he uses just to relax.
All by himself?
No. Actually, we both do, but only on weekends.
Hope that won't work for you. You know that.
I can handle it. So far, it's been okay.
Now, this part of the story, like I said, I at this point, I'm in Nebraska. I'm in the military. I'm moving on. I don't have much connection. After the first husband, then everything fell apart there. The abuse, the violence, everything there. Then when she marries the second husband, I was there at the wedding. I came from Nebraska in for that. So I was there for that part. Then at this point, her meeting Robert, starting to talk to Robert, I didn't know much about this. I think I'd heard some about it. I wasn't paying a lot of attention. I was, in the military. I was full-time student in two different schools. And so I was doing, trying to get all my theological education in the military, family. So I was extremely busy at this time. So when this all was going on, I knew about some of it, but didn't know a lot of this part of the story at this part. At some point, I don't know at what point in the timeline, the first husband is murdered. So that happens at some point in a lot of this.
But okay can go bad really fast, especially when you're using.
I knew Robert was right, that I couldn't keep my drug use weekends only for long. But I just kept using and hiding until Melanie got married and moved away. By then, my husband was struggling with his own issues and eventually moved out. My friendship with Robert was the only constant thing in my life, except for my persistent need for a high. As a result, the phone line into the prison was quickly becoming my lifeline.
So you're on your own again?
Just me, now that Melanie's married.
Melanie tells me you're living in that old house of your grandma's?
You and Melanie have always had a special connection.
Ever since she came to visit me as a little girl.
She sure has needed a good Bible-reading man's influence in her life.
Could be you do, too.
Maybe so.
You should think about it.
I knew Robert was right. I needed a Bible-reading kind of guy to be a good influence on me, and I also knew my feelings for him had grown. I knew he understood me better than anyone ever had. So when he brought up the very unorthodox idea of marriage to a prisoner serving time, I was shocked.
Now, at this point, from the outside, I'm just going to be honest, the rest of us was kind of like, what is going on? What is happening here? Like, because I would only hear parts of this, right? Like, I wasn't as intimately involved in some of this. I'm kind of like, wait, what is my sister doing now? Like, what is she's going to marry someone who's in prison? Like, this is where things were like, what is happening? But at the same time, any communication I did have with her, because there was times, I was talking to her about in some of this and all the different things that were going on. I had changed my approach here, and it was no longer like I'm just going to be judging and condemning, because I had grown up a lot, right? Earlier on in her life, when the drugs were starting and some of this stuff was going on, I was much younger in my faith and much more like, what is your problem? You're not even a Christian. I was very much just condemning, very much approaching it in definitely not a grace-based way. I'm very much a law-based way because, things here, this is where things, and it's crazy looking at the timeline, but things are about to reach an absolutely things are about to explode and fall apart. At one point, she's living in, my mom and dad's old house, right? There's no way to say this nicely. It had been turned into basically a drug den. They had utterly destroyed the house was destroyed beyond, like, you can't even comprehend the living conditions they were in. It was insane. The things that were going on, the things she was doing to get the drugs, utterly just, things had reached a level like I cannot wrap my mind. I can't even explain to you how bad they were. Definitely can't do it on a Christian podcast. There was sexual things going on that I cannot go into. There was drug use. I mean, the house was totally destroyed. They were living in conditions that no human being should be living in. It was bad. Things at this point had started getting really, really bad around this. Maybe not exactly at this time, but things, maybe it was a little after this, but things were slowly unraveling.
And thrilled.
Tomorrow's the big day. Ready for a marriage by proxy?
If it means I'll have you in my life forever, I'll be ready.
You clear on what to do?
Yep. I will have a person to stand in and answer for you when he hears you answer by phone.
Well, who did you find?
I got that covered. Just promise me you won't back out.
Never. You and Melanie are my life now, and someday maybe I'll be paroled and we can start a real life together.
I'm hoping and praying that will happen.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Now, somewhere in the midst of this time frame, I start talking to Robert, not all the time, but he would call frequently, holidays. He would call. He would ask me there at some point in all of this, he's all worried about Hope, asking me what is Hope doing, what's going on, and I don't have any answers for him. And it's like, yeah. So me and Robert do talk a lot, not a lot, but we talked a lot here at specific times when Hope's behavior just became so erratic and started literally just. She was rapidly descending into just total chaos. And by the time you get to part 2 of this, you'll hear, if you want to hear the rest of the story, but we'll play just a little bit more.
Having a husband who actually loved me was a new and wonderful experience. But being separated because of his prison sentence was emotionally painful. And when things got lonely, the old habits came back hard. I filled my lonely hours with drugs that I did my best to hide from both Robert and Melanie. But I couldn't hide my addiction from my bosses. So it eventually cost me one good job after another. With no money and a raging habit to support, my life became a dumpster fire. I was frantic to keep Melanie from finding out.
And a dumpster fire is the biggest understatement in the history of humankind. What turned it turned into was insanity. It does. It just goes from bad to worse. So what you're listening to is my sister's story that has been turned into a radio drama for the radio program Unshackled. It aired a couple of weeks ago. My sister sent this to me yesterday, and I play a little bit of part of it. You heard my part in it, which again, that event, they dramatized that. That's not the way it went down. I'm going to ask my sister, hey, that's not the way that went down. How did that show up? Again, she told the basic story and then they dramatized it. So some things is a combination of events and some things, but the story gets horrible. And if you want to listen to the rest, go to unshackled.org, unshackled.org. Scroll down, look for Hope Part 1, Part 2. You'll hear her story. What I'm going to do is when this is over and I upload this, the links will be in the show notes. I'll put the links in the show notes. Secondly, if you're using the Church One app, I'll send out the links. And then third, if you go to the brand new, just launched today, sermonaudio.com website, you should look at it. It's the brand new website, launched today, sermonaudio.com. Looks awesome. Go to Theology Central, do a search, and when you get there, look out for articles, and I'll try to post the links in the articles as well. So there's lots of ways to find it, and you can hear the rest of my sister's story. You'll have to listen to the rest of Part 1, because then that ends, oh boy, yeah. That's like so much of this. A lot of the bad things here are not really being described here. They're not there, but it goes. This story just falls completely and utterly apart. But and you can hear then how it all turned out. So there you have it. My sister's story. I was a part of it a little bit, but to be fair, I wasn't a part of it probably the way I should have. My whole life was falling apart, trying to figure out my life. And then finally, I'm in the military, I move away. And it's not like at that time you could just pick up a cell phone and call someone or FaceTime someone or text someone. You'd have to call long distance, which cost lots of money, if you remember that. So there was limited. My connection, there was not much I could do at that time. There was not much I could do. So, and then when I did show up again, I brought in my independent fundamental Baptist lordship kind of mindset. And I just basically threw her off under the bus and said, you're basically not a Christian. You're going to go to hell. And I don't know what your problem is. And I was not very compassionate in any way, shape, or form. So my Christianity was not of much assistance to her at this time. And then when she got so wrapped up into drugs, nobody knew what to do. Because if you confronted her that she was she would get offended and she'd get mad and she'd get defensive and say, how dare you accuse me? I'm not doing anything. And then it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then everything we tried to do, everything, you couldn't do anything. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew what to do. And so then it was just, you saw her life like, you are living in these conditions. What? Nobody knew what to do and nobody knew how to get into a confrontation with her. So it was bad. It was bad. And I don't know if the program even comes close to capturing how bad it was. I could do 10 parts on how bad it was. But there you have it. So Unshackled is the radio program. My sister's story has aired, and I'll post the links to it if you want to hear the rest of it. And for some of you, you may be able, one, to relate to her story. Two, you may have family members who are living out her story. And hopefully somewhere in the story, you'll find some sense of hope, because it is the story of my sister, whose name is Hope. All right, thanks for listening. Everyone have a great day. Just remember, every person you meet, there's a story. Knowing that story, learning that story, and hearing that story gives you a better understanding of the person you're talking to. Thanks for listening, and God bless.